The greatest thing from Quebec since Celine Dion and GSP.
A pair of siblings.
A couple of stellar young men.
Two brothers.
These two young men.
Two siblings.
The hard-hitting pair represent Canada.
Welcome to Thinkin Bros. My name is Chris.
And I'm Alex.
We're your favorite corner store philosophers trying to figure out life one conundrum at a time. Today we're going to be talking about the impact of digital media on children's intelligence while controlling for genetic differences in cognition and socioeconomic background, and also Jean-Paul Sartre's The Wall. In the original French, it's Lemur, and not to be confused with the Lemurs. And we did something quite special for this episode, I would say. We did, I'm a big kind of reading the original. I'm the, read the book before I saw the movie kind of guy. So we decided to learn French, and we read it in the original French.
Yeah,
and,
well, I think this was the most effort we've put into an episode. Personally, I don't know, how long did it take you to learn French?
Yeah, I mean, this episode has been planned out from before the first episode. We wanted this to be episode
Obviously,
1.
Yeah.
So it must be like 6.5 months, which I guess is still pretty respectable.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's going to be like one of those test things where we're going to discuss this. We're going to like translate some of the quotes in here so we can actually say them in English. And then tomorrow it's going to be like, oh, what is bonjour anymore?
Right. Yeah. So in the comments, tell us how our French is.
Yeah. And Bob's your uncle. So I'll let you, you're more of the psychologist guy, right? I'll let you maybe present what the first thing we read is. And hey, just to preface it, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more sorry for you. You're the one that suffers while reading this kind of stuff, I think, more than I do.
Well, it was in the free database. If you go to some science journal like Nature, I think, it's one of the free ones that they offer. So I guess, it matched what I expect a free article to be published at.
What do you mean? It's open science.
Yeah, I don't
They're
know what
sharing
I
their
mean.
data.
Yeah, so this is the best they got, I guess. Right.
I don't think so. I mean, just some researchers share their data, some don't.
Fair.
I think it's an interesting question to know how, I would say social media more particularly, but just digital media in general affects the development of children. And in this specific paper, as you maybe could have guessed from the title, they tested the effect of digital media on intelligence. And so the way they operationalized digital media was by doing self-reports, right? They were all self-reports of time spent doing 3 different things. Either socializing, as they called it, playing video games, or watching videos, right? Watching videos or TV. And then, watching was split up into, TV and just videos.
So, by the way, I think this was done in 2021, but it's interesting to me. Would scrolling on Facebook count as socializing?
I mean, you saw my comment there, right?
Yeah. Well, a few of them, but because it's not necessarily clear. But the study was done in 2021, so you would expect someone to catch up to the whole division of maybe 2022, right? The whole division between Messenger and Facebook and how those divide. Also, they were self-reports. So I guess if you do ask a kid of 10 years old, like, how much do you spend time texting a day? He's not going to tell you how much he spends time scrolling on Facebook. So maybe the self-report part is actually a good thing on their part. Because I'm sure they would classify Instagram as socializing, right? Because you're looking at other people's pictures and commenting and probably texting on it. But I would definitely just classify it as passive consumption.
They did classify Instagram as socializing.
Oh.
Yeah, which I thought was...
I only remembered the socializing as weird texting apps like WhatsApp and the other kid one, right? At some point they had those.
I should find it, because
it's not very essential, honestly. It's not very essential.
I think it's a bad part of the study, because it's not at all socializing. They said Instagram. It's not at all socializing if you're scrolling through social media and just looking at, I don't know, pictures of celebrities and pictures of your friends. It's
True. But that's that's my intuition I had. Like, that's one of the pitfalls of someone who doesn't understand what it would mean.
That's what I was thinking too. But they can't be like so far detached from society and from normal people. Like, they're not total nerds that don't even know what a social media.
Well, okay, well,
is.
if you want to get nerdy, actually, I was gonna say the type of video game you play matters so much.
And they do comment on it, but I think that brings up like a difficulty with this sort of studying is that, look, to find an actual effect, I think you would have to isolate so much the specific media you're using. Like, as much as the type of video games you play matters, because they said they lumped in together Candy Crush on your phone, as well as like some technical, I'm not going to name games, some more, something that requires more cognitive effort and something you can get skillful at. And
Wordle.
Exactly. No, but on consoles or on PC, they lumped everything, all of that together, which was a potential limitation, as they said, because it certainly affects intelligence differently if you're playing something mindless, because there are mindless games like a cookie clicker. That's a video game.
Yeah,
right?
Imagine.
That's a video game, and they lumped it,
technically,
presumably lumped it together with League of Legends.
Yeah, but look, that's the biggest division I would do instantly is multiplayer or non-multiplayer, because I think that especially the social intelligence associated to someone who's like sitting in the corner of the break yard. That's a thing schools have.
Okay.
Break yard.
Schoolyard.
Schoolyards for breaks.
Used for.
Like the guy sitting in the corner of the schoolyard playing cookie clicker and, I don't know, coming back home and telling mom everything was fine, but he has a high score on cookie clicker is very different than the guy who's like playing with other kids in the schoolyard and talking about how, even Fortnite, how they're going to play Fortnite in the evening. And honestly, having played Fortnite, like dabbled in it for approximately 30 minutes, I'm telling you, like, I didn't want to believe any of the positive conclusions. We'll get to those, but I didn't want to believe any of the positive conclusions of the study. But the spatial awareness and the 3D object rotation necessitated by it is incredible.
Yeah, I mean,
like,
the coordination. I think I played one game one time because I was with someone and they handed me the remote, and you have to like click so many buttons. You have to.
You're not a gamer when you call the controller a remote.
Did I say a remote?
Remote?
They handed me the remote to turn on the TV, and then they gave me the controller. And then
right.
Yeah, but you have to like learn, because they have like specific buildings, right? So if you want to have a wall outside and a ramp going up, they do it in like half a second.
You can build spiraling staircases, and you have to adjust the angles with 3D.
So specifically, specifically we're talking about intelligence. So this is why that matters. You were talking about socializing with like a cookie clicker in the corner, and that matters for other reasons. But for intelligence, I clearly can see how different games require a different level. Ask more or less of you, and I think that's what you need when you're developing as a kid. You need something to challenge you, and video games can definitely do that.
I think at the beginning it had the copy paste article of any psych study where it's like, oh, this will affect social policy. Like, our conclusions will affect social policy, and when a video game regulation as a social policy would definitely have to take into account what we're saying here, because we're not talking, I guess, I don't know, Clash of Clans. We're not talking those things. I don't know how to describe it, but anyway, having played video games, I can guarantee that there are mind-numbing video games that make you, just burn through neurons for
and not in a good way.
And not in a good way. And on the other hand, there are games that I could see to have potential, but I'll get to my negative view on the whole subject. Anyway.
Yeah, but it's like in elder people, playing brain challenging games delays the onset of Alzheimer's, right? It's just a question of challenging yourself. And some games do that and some games don't. But as much as we're saying this for video games, I would say the same thing for TV and for different genres of TV, and for they did analyze videos and TV separately, which I think is necessary, but also like so many kinds of videos that could affect people in so many different ways. And obviously socializing, putting Instagram scrolling into that is pretty crazy.
Yeah, so okay, there are those fallacies, but in a general way, considering the 10,000 kids sample,
Yeah.
nuanced mistakes that they may make up on the chain may matter less, considering the strength of the sample. If we just give them the leniency of that, what did they find? Well, actually, I can tell you what they found.
Yeah, but just okay. Tell us what they found, just to
Okay.
warn. They control for genetic differences. The way they do that is that they found the state-of-the-art indicators or correlates, genetic correlates with intelligence, which they called CogPGS, cognitive polygenic score, which is just, I guess, an indicator of. I didn't understand it entirely, honestly, but an indicator of intelligence, but through genetics.
Yeah, just a bunch of statistical correlations and
Right.
complex stuff.
And so they're checking for genetics and socioeconomic background. They just controlled for it. Nothing more to say.
Yeah, which is something, well, at least the genetic part is something that they're adding to the literature that wasn't done before.
Mm-hmm.
So they measured the correlation between video games, well,
Screen time,
digital
yeah, sure.
media exposure
Yeah.
and intelligence at baseline. So whenever they, I don't know, met the kids, I mean,
think they were
didn't really
8 or
meet the
9.
kids. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, 8 or 9. So the baseline.
Yeah, they used data from the ABC.
Exactly. So
study.
it wasn't even the experiment. They just used the big database. And what they found is that time watching videos is negatively correlated with intelligence, minus 0.12, socializing minus 0.10, and gaming had no correlation. And after 2 years of kind of following up with them, I mean, is the goal of, okay, actually, I am going to get to that with my problem of, okay, if at baseline there is no correlation, but after 2 years, you do find a correlation. Is there something to be interpreted out of that?
Well, when they checked later, I don't know what exact result you're talking about, but there is a difference between intelligence assessed at a point and the difference in the improvement in intelligence. Because a lot of the points for the video games was improvement in intelligence.
Right. So for gaming after 2 years, it was 0.17 correlation positive with intelligence. No correlation for socializing. Interesting. And 0.12 for watching videos, which was a surprising factor, I believe.
Yeah.
Now,
Is that improvement in intelligence?
this is read from the abstract, actually. Like, I transcribed it from the abstract, so you have the information right there. Now, you have to understand that I entered this, when I read the title, I already knew. Okay, I already knew that if they were going to say that digital media exposure is bad for kids, I was going to, back it as much as I back William James, okay? Or Socrates. If they were going to say the opposite, which they kind of do, I was going to find any way to destroy their results.
You were going to back... Okay, so you're just a contrarian. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm not a contrarian. Well, I wouldn't be a contrarian if they said digital media exposure is bad for kids.
Oh, you were going to back I thought you were going to back digital media.
No.
You were going to back the article.
No, I was
okay.
going to back the article. So now...
Well.
So now they've come up with this conclusion. Okay, first of all, let's start with the fact that it's a weak correlation, right? It's a weak correlation. Sure. Now, it's very statistically significant considering the 10,000 kids sample. That's fine.
Yeah, but a small correlation, I think, is expected when... Like, you're lumping together, as we said in the beginning, you're lumping together all this stuff. And so, let's say a small subsection of video games do improve cognitive function and intelligence. And then all the other video games that don't are going to bring that bring that correlation down. So maybe that's one explanation for it. But
Yeah, I don't like that. So yeah.
what I just said.
Yeah, because it gives the potential of higher. Now, my main question is, first of all, we can talk about the contrast of gaming not being correlated at baseline. Because look, the strongest thing in the whole thing is that after 2 years, there's a 0.17 correlation with gaming, which is, I think it's kind of edging on the mid-strength correlation. Is that kind of it?
I don't remember. I think
it's in the upper bracket of the lower ones, let's say.
Mhm.
So it's something to be considered here. Now, the other thing is, let's say we do find that it correlates, right? What we're trying to determine essentially from this shift from the 1980s babies that played with, I don't know, puzzles, real world objects, everything like that, what we're trying to determine really is its difference with playing with real world objects, isn't it? It's not, is gaming correlated? Like, kids are growing up, they're getting smarter anyway, and considering the paradigm of what an active kid is today is probably one who's gonna play in the courtyard with
The courtyard.
courtyard.
Oh yeah, that's it.
I think it's fine. With other kids, right? Probably discuss. Well, I'm gonna say it in the most scientific way possible, and it's gonna make me sound inhuman, but discuss his digital media experience of the prior day, right? Like, oh, did you watch that? Did you watch that? Remember how we played that, right? It's those, like, you know, we both worked in a camp. That's kind of what it is. It's like, oh, did you see this trend on TikTok? Let me make this joke. And if you don't understand it, that must mean you're not like up to date on the TikTok trends. Oh, are you free tonight? Do you have your hockey practice? Because I want to game with you. No one talks like this specifically, but this is what they mean, kind of. So it's inevitable that for someone to be active and kind of involved, sure, it can be like isolation, but if you lump all of these together, gaming, socializing, video watching, it is part of the social life of a kid, unfortunately. So my biggest thing is here, do we really want to prove that there is a small correlation between an increase in intelligence and that an active kid is going to be involved a lot in digital media and they're going to get smarter anyway? Or do we want to contrast it with how much intelligence gain could they get if they did actual normal things with real world objects? That's all my biggest worry with it.
I think that's definitely like the interesting question, in the sense that, like, it's a really cool scientific question to answer, to say, is the world better for kids now, or was it better before, right?
Yeah,
like,
sure.
Is the digital media harming the kids? Is it restricting their intellectual development? And a direct comparison with pre-digital media children would be cool, but we don't have that data, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, what this study is doing, is trying to do, is sort of that, is that, well, first of all, it's about the change in intelligence, right? So, I mean, you know this, but it's not, yeah, their IQ improved from 9 to 11. That's obvious because they're growing up, and IQ increases dramatically when you're growing up. And it always does, whether you're watching digital media or not. But it's the change in intelligence and its correlation with digital media exposure.
Yeah, I understand that statistically. Yeah, it's not.
So like less. Yeah.
I know. I'm not saying, oh, well, obviously, kids between 10 and 12 played video games and their intelligence naturally increased, so they found a correlation. I understand the statistics behind it. I'm just saying that, which is why I was using the word active, right? I strongly think that the way to gain intelligence is by being involved in the world more. And all I'm saying is that the today's version of being involved in the world is all the things I named: watching videos, discussing them with friends, having friends, texting those friends, playing video games with those friends. And the people who game more potentially, or not game more, sorry, are more exposed to digital media are potentially the more active ones, and therefore their intelligence will increase. And my only area of concern is, okay, well, did the active kid in the 1980s get more advantages? If you related, I mean, what did they do? Like card castle building. Is that what they did? Reading, card castle building with friends, and
window watching.
Okay.
Yeah.
And walking around town,
Yeah.
right? Like, remember when we used to walk around town? So are all okay, those things, and also the things that I'm not aware of kids in the 80s, could those things
Yo-yoing.
be yo-yoing, thank you. Could those things be more beneficial than this? That's the only interesting thing for me. And when you show weak correlations to me, I can just rationalize it through, well, okay, yeah,
They're just more active.
yeah, they're more active. They're gonna see some benefits, like whatever.
That makes sense, but doesn't that assume that like all other when kids consume less digital media, they're less active? Although that's what you wanted them to do. Well, replacing that by active real life activities.
Yeah, but all I'm saying is that an inactive kid these days isn't one who's going to replace all his digital media exposure to book reading and castle building, right? Not necessarily. They're
because
just
other
going to be
kids
like,
don't do that. So if you're consuming less digital media,
if you're not
then
in the,
you sort of are going to be less active because you're not going to have many friends to do that with.
yeah, that's my theory. Again, like speculation, but the other thing is, I think, like maybe the last thing I'd like to address is that this may be last of its kind in interest because of the rapid progress of AI. Now, what you're seeing is that, first of all, kids don't really have to like learn to write well anymore or express ideas. They can just ask the AI. And I think the next type of these studies with large databases is going to be like language acquisition, problem solving ability hurt by AI permission in school, something like that. I think that's the next step.
Thank God we didn't grow up with like AI.
Yeah. Certainly.
As good as it is now.
Certainly. But it just makes me think how society is so cyclical. Okay. I believe in this. I had this discussion in one of my psych classes. Like three girls were in a team, and they were saying, "Oh, what's gonna happen with this AI stuff? The kids are gonna be messed up, blah blah." And I thought, well, because everything is everything, considering the premises that everything is everything and society is cyclical, as one knows, that after the invention of electricity, candle makers were worried out of their mind, right? Or parents were saying like, oh, back in my day, I had to, go find the fire. I had to know how to light a fire and everything. How messed up is this generation going to be? And ultimately, there's a normal curve. Some people are going to figure it out, and some people are going to succumb. As much as internet, right? Some people to this day don't know how to properly find something on the internet, and they're left behind. And there's a normal distribution of people who are going to adapt to AI and use it as a, the best metaphor for me is you become a cyborg, right? If the ChatGPT is an extension of your brain and you know exactly what to use it for, as much as you know what to use your visual cortex for or your prefrontal cortex for, right? You know what that's good at. So what is ChatGPT good at for you? And as long as you can handle that, it's just an extension of your brain.
Yeah, I just think I'm like attached to, I didn't like when you said as much as you use your visual cortex, because imagine after that, like more technological developments, we don't have to use our visual cortex. We just can experience things.
Certainly, yeah.
And that sounds horrible. But once again, it's like the bias of the times, me being the person that I am, not having grown up in these situations.
The only valid concern, the only reason your concern is more valid than like parents in the 2000s saying, oh, what is going on with this generation of kids, internet, blah, blah, blah. The only way we can not spin off your comment as like, oh, back in my day, right, is that you're saying this now. In 10 years, we've talked about this. AI progress is going to be exponential. In 10 years, you're going to look back and laugh at how you thought this was messed up. It's going to get much more messed up, my friend.
Yeah. But as you said, they will learn how to use AI much better than I probably can. And I'm going to be the one that needs to catch up to the kids. And there are always positive ways of doing this stuff, as with people that were scared about the advent of the internet, right? The people before the internet, the people before the internet had to go to the library,
if such a thing was, existed.
And to look up in an encyclopedia the necessary information, and they were really good at that, right? But now it's just absolutely useless to have that skill. But they're still much better than we are at looking stuff up in a library, looking through the index and finding an encyclopedia. So maybe my skills, my reading skills and writing skills will become useless in the future because ChatGPT is going to replace that part of my brain. But I think still a worry is, which is kind of similar with any new tool that pops up and that makes life easier, is that isn't this development of writing skills also critical in the development of, critical thinking and development of intelligence? It's just normal development of a child. And having that, having a crutch in the form of AI is going to restrict that development.
This is the same. Okay, look, this is the argument I give for my mediocre spatial awareness. About people say, well, what are you going to do when you don't have a Google Maps? Look, I have 20 years of experience where I have had Google Maps. If I don't, I'm probably going to ask someone with a phone who has Google Maps to direct me where to go. I don't need to explore car. Oh, I know you're saying this because you're good at that, right? Navigating.
No. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that. I mean, I agree with you. It doesn't matter. I never insult you. You know what I mean? I never insult you on your spatial awareness. Like I think that does matter much less. What I'm saying is that it could affect like their actual IQ, their intelligence. Because they need that for development.
What I'm saying is that we're not the main intelligence anymore. Like, I know it's hard to say, but you're saying, oh, it's a crutch. Well, if the crutch is, how would I say this? Bolted to their brain in the form of like a neural link integrated with an AI, what are you going to say to the guy? Oh, you're so stupid. Yeah, but I have my Neuralink. I don't care. I'm still going to be better at problem solving than you, for example. Let's say the next generation is just born with this idea that Neuralink can fix all your problems with an integrated AI. And the ultimate result is, we're going to deny this. We're going to say, no way. Going into my brain, there's no way I'm plugging anything in. The ultimate result is in 10 years, there's going to be like a 15-year-old kid to whom you ask like a rocket science question. He's like, okay, processing done. And I'm going to be like, oh no, I majored in psychology in university. I can't do this. But they're going to do this. And then you're going to look at yourself and you're going to be like, well, I was talking about this crutch and everything, but I mean, the guy, it's bolted to his brain. He's a cyborg. Like, what do you mean a crutch? What do you mean intelligence? Who cares about intelligence? We got an artificial one. Look, it's funny that I'm the like open-minded one, like the devil's advocate in this situation, because I would be very adamant on kind of refusing the positive points of such a future. But I think I'm trying to be the most realistic possible to remain open to the consideration that, look, if society isn't indeed cyclical, and the people who, when, I don't know, metal swords were invented, some people were like, nah, we're going to keep our wooden weapons because this is what we know and trust. And then they, get, I'm not going to say the words. And then the same thing happens with the internet where like, nah, we used to be real. I know how to navigate a library and how every book is classified according to the author and whatever, but I can Google stuff, right? And I don't want to get swept up by the times. A quote I heard recently is, money flows from the rigid to the adaptable. It's the quote on my computer. And yeah, I genuinely don't want to re-enter rigidity. I wanted to say enter rigidity, but I do mean re-enter it, because the more flexible you are and ready for, future things. And you're saying kids in the future are going to use AI better than you. Look, right now is the time to not let that happen. Like, you have the intelligence of starting right now, and as long as you admit that that is the future.
Yeah, but I think as much effort as someone puts in, if someone grew up in an environment where that's all they did, like, that's the way to be good at stuff, right? I'm good at the sports I'm good at because I grew up playing them, and learning them now is different.
You're right, but also before 25, you have a lot of time left to, like, and you're
Now.
flexible. Yeah, you got to do it now, because look, ultimately, if you think about the mechanics of somebody getting swept behind by the internet era, is just when Google came out, they were like, I don't believe that this is the future. I'll stick to my books. That's the way to get swept behind. And then 10 years pass, and you're like, well, where can you find the local electrician? The yellow book isn't viable anymore. So if you know it's the future, so why, instead of Googling, aren't you like experimenting the perfect wording to get what you want out of ChatGPT? Or you want to make a schedule for yourself instead of schedule. My bad. Instead of using Notion and making the chart or learning Excel, why aren't you asking ChatGPT, make me a chart?
Well,
right.
Mostly, I'm not using ChatGPT as much as some people, because I don't see like, what would I use it for?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm saying these things as kind of a mirror, because I am guilty of this. Like, I do all the digital media production and everything, the website, whatever. I'm underutilizing it so much. I recently did my schedule. I organized it by hand. Could I ask ChatGPT, like, oh, put this in the morning, put this. So, whatever. All I'm saying is, again, I'm so glad we deviated from the subject, because it wasn't that fascinating subject. But, okay, practically, there is a certain correlation between digital media consumption, especially gaming, and intelligence. But it is far from meaning that it is the best thing for a child, right? The average there stated was 6 hours a day. You know what that means? Is that whenever they're not at school, assuming that at school they're not using that, and they're actually in the books.
In the books. Kids sleep 10 hours, right? So that... Well, yeah.
Okay, well, let's be optimistic. That means it's 8 hours of school and 6 hours of digital media, and then sleepy time. Yeah, plus 10 is 24. So it's taking over their lives, and the question here isn't, can we prove that it could have a benefit? It's what is best. And this didn't address that for me.
Yeah, I guess affecting policy,
yeah, because,
like, specifically is what they want to do.
Policy schmolicy. Look, the thing is, you read such a thing, all you want to know is, practically, what am I going to do with my kid? And I'm certainly not going to let them game 6 hours a day. Or even 2, but whatever. That's more of a personal thing, I guess.
Yeah, it's also that it's sort of like the people that have these preconceived notions. You said you were going into this article with a preconceived idea of what you wanted the results to be. And if the results didn't end up as you wanted them, you would deny the study. And if they were what you wanted, you would protect it with your life. That's the way people are mostly. And so this sort of research, like, what does it bring to the parents that already let their kids play video games and go on social media? Nothing. It's like confirmation. Oh, science says I'm doing the right thing. You would have been doing it anyway, even if it was detrimental. And the people like you that have an idea that social media has more negative effects than positive effects, or at least must be used in moderation, are going to do what they do anyway. Not exactly, right? It has some effects, I guess, but
yeah, I think my largest problem with it is really the dopamine, like, addiction pattern that I talk about. Because you take Sudoku, as you said, I think this is what the biggest thing I imagine, the cognitive motivation to remain flexible for elderly people, the Sudoku types. You turn that into like a flashy, reward system with gems and Bible products, and whenever you complete a line in the Sudoku, it kind of like flashes and gives you dopamine hit or whatever. To loyal listeners, I call this the juice, right? You've you've made it kind of the best version it could be for a hedonist.
And you barely had to squeeze. You barely
had to squeeze.
And barely squeeze.
And look, the problem is, if, for example, right, you take Fortnite. To those who can't picture what I mean because they've never played or seen it, you're literally building spiraling staircases in 3D space, right? Imagine, in a way, let's say with Legos, right? Imagine you were doing that with Legos and architecturing a building and understanding how, let's go to the very basics, right? The foundations have to be larger than whatever comes after because otherwise it's going to top over.
Mm-hmm.
Like things like that. And not because it's programmed into game physics, but because you're experimenting on it in real life with Legos and whatever. That, to me, is the good that both the Legos and Fortnite can offer. But you enter young kids with extremely malleable minds into things that completely are scientifically designed to exploit their dopamine systems. And this is where the problem comes in. Oh, I have a gaming addiction. Oh, I have this problem. I have this problem. Nothing seems interesting to me. I am numb to every other thing. I don't want to play cards. What do you mean playing cards? The cards don't flash. They don't ding when I get the right answer. I mean, I'm trying to learn a new language. Even Duolingo is, at every step of the way, there's the owl like flashing and, I don't know, spiraling. What's the dance when you spiral? Like balleting, whatever.
Okay.
Balleting down whenever you get a right answer and like saying good job. It's like, okay, what's the step up from that? Literally sending electrical impulses into my dopamine neurons to motivate them directly.
Yeah.
Like,
I definitely had this thought, which
no
I think
ceiling.
is very important to say about this study, is that that's not it after, right? Like, what I thought a possible explanation was for gaming not having an effect on intelligence at baseline, although I'll say this anyway, like, maybe the years where the first assessment is when people start gaming, like kids start gaming, and it hasn't had an effect yet, but then throughout the development, as they play video games, it develops their intelligence. But as you said, I think the detrimental thing may come later, and it's not as if you have this study, even if it found more profound effects, that says that video games are good at developing intelligence, and then snap, that's it. You should make policy to have children play more video games or whatever it is they want to do, because there are also the effects after of, as you said, eventually, like, you have to become an adult and you have to grow out of the things you did as a kid, which in the 1980s was yo-yoing, as we said.
Yeah, and like accounting isn't a big step up from that.
From yo-yoing, but like, that's completely a joke, but truly it's much less of a step than from gaming, like literally firing dopamine into your brain.
Like, I said it as a joke, but I legitimately shouldn't have, because it's exactly what I mean. The dopamine baseline modification is enormous. That's what I mean. There's no ceiling. What is the step up from an owl saying good job when you get a word in Spanish right? Like,
yeah, and the biggest thing with Duolingo too is, like, I don't know, well, the conversations with people are not gonna be that way, and they're not gonna feel so dopaminergic either. But
yeah, like your job, your boss isn't gonna say epic win when you get number 1 in Fortnite. Like, it's anyway. It's
yeah. So another thing to definitely explore and to think about is that, okay, yeah, it can be like puzzle solving, something that's cognitively challenging and develops intelligence, But what are the negative effects beyond that? What are the negative effects in the sense that, like, you just get addicted to it? A lot of people do.
Yeah, and look, I just thought about this. When you're building Legos, right? Let's say you are bound to become an architecture guy. What's those? Architect. Yeah. Like the pattern of building Legos is having an initial vision, finding the right pieces, right? Searching in the big pile. Assuming you're not following the instructions, right? Like actually having fun with Legos. Trying stuff out. No, I know. You remember those times when we did that?
When we didn't follow the instructions. Yeah, but
when we had a big box
true.
of like
that's
random Legos.
That was our main thing. That was just like...
that was also probably the best. Anyway. You
we
try out a certain...
plates.
Yeah, you try out a certain structure. You see if it's structurally sound. You modify it if it's not. If it falls or it just doesn't work out aesthetically, you start again. You get an impression of, did I do the color matching correctly? And look, all of these things, and then you get the final result and you show it to someone like your mom, or this is where I'm going with the parallel. You show the final project to your boss and they're going to either say it's good or not. And it's either going to match your vision or not. So all of those things look like real world patterns. Attempt, failure, reiteration. Is it aesthetically pleasing? Color match. Like problem solving. Like, oh, where is this block? Could I use 2 other blocks and combine them to... Like, this is real life.
Yeah, I also have an intuition against the metaverse and against all this stuff that, like, procedural skills and procedural memory and everything like you do with your hands is so important. Yeah. You have to learn, like, through experience and actually being there and looking at things through different angles and working with them with your hands. That all of this is lost out, and I don't know if I can explain why that, that bugs me so much, but it does.
Yeah. Anyway, Lemur. So Jean-Paul Sartre, a famous existentialist. I've shown my disdain for existentialism because this is what we call with Alex step 2.
With existentialism, I mean mainly you call it. I just play into your game. But
okay.
Do you mean the absurd?
Oh yes, the absurd. Okay. Yeah, the absurd is kind of step 2 of like, well, what is this life? It's the adolescent level philosophy, I'd say. So, okay.
I think we should tell the story, and then we can discuss themes or whatever.
Of course. So the story starts with 3 prisoners being interrogated in a way, but at some point, and this is going to become a main theme of the story, so I'm going to spoil it. The third prisoner that gets interrogated.
Juan.
Juan, the main character, I'd say. Oh, no.
Pablo's the main character.
No, it was Pablo, I think.
Okay, I just thought you were talking about Juan.
No, Pablo says, is this an interrogation or a judgment? And the police guy says, oh, it's a judgment. I mean, you guys are going to be executed anyway, so whatever.
When is this? At the beginning? Yeah,
at the beginning. Okay. Well, he doesn't say the second part. He just says, yeah, it's a judgment. So there's this theme of determinism from the very beginning of, and you're going to understand where I'm going with this. It's kind of a foreshadowing of whatever you say here, whatever you do, this thing is going to happen. Right? Which is kind of the turning point of the story at the end. So there's this vivid description of the time they spend in the prison cell in the 24 hours before their execution. They're put in a prison cell.
Yeah, but okay, yeah, well, go ahead.
A doctor is sent to them. At the beginning, the doctor is framed as being there for comfort, but what they discover he's actually there for...
I mean, instantly Pablo is like sees through
Pablo
him.
He
interrogates
a big
him.
Skeptic, and I like it.
A big skeptic and a big hater of humanity.
Yeah. Even so, he doesn't appreciate the young guy Juan. Right. He thinks he's a little bit pathetic, and in his reactions of
he's just a wimp.
Yeah. But the other guy, it seems as though he's kind of on good terms with at the beginning,
and then he's like, I don't like him either.
Yeah, they have a link, but I think as the impending death impends, I guess. More or less.
I guess.
He develops this aversion, and I think the aversion comes from the fact that their reactions are quite similar. Where what's the other guy's name?
Tom.
Where Tom kind of pisses his pants, right? Stuff like that. And
The way you said that.
yeah, Pablo at some points his pants are wet, and he doubts if it's the sweat or pee. So a lot of points there are
This is a
parallels.
big turning point in the story. I think it's P. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, this is one of the uncertainties, just like at the end of Inception, not. And a lot of parallels between their reactions of, they're ultimately scared, but they're the more mature ones in the room, and they don't really want to show it. And they have this kind of obsession, and they can't really put it at ease, the impending death. So I think Pablo has quite a big ego, and he doesn't want to react like others react. That's a thing that he says.
I think that's part of it, but I also think that with Tom, I think that him not liking Tom comment comes later, but it also has to do with like the growing indifference he has to build up. Well, they all Tom and Pablo sort of build up. Is you see the psychological progression of Pablo just growing more and more indifferent about everything when he looks out through the corner of their not a cell, they're in a hospital, but looks out at the sky and says, before, when I looked at the sky and I looked at different times of day, the morning used to remind me of the dew in the grass and the blah blah blah, and this reminded me of this, and this reminded, and now the sky reminds me of nothing. It calls no images to my mind, and it's better this way. And many other indicators where he's just growing indifferent more and more because he knows his death is coming in the morning very soon, and so he's already dead. That's another thing. They're already dead. Like they're already dead.
Yeah, a lot of times in the description of the doctor, he says, "Oh, that's why he came. He came to observe the dead."
Yeah.
And when they look at him, they call him the living.
Yeah. He's alive, and they're already dead.
Yeah. So again, that's why the doc. That's why where I was, right. That's why the doctor was there. It's to observe how dead people act, and at some point, he takes the Juan's pulse, right? He just wants to know their physiological reactions, kind of observe them. And at some points, he's kind of nice. I guess he asks, do you guys need anything? But he's also doing it instrumentally. There's a callback for you. To kind of enrich his experience as a doctor. So
yeah, Pablo says that. Well, he thinks that the Belgian doctor, is very dumb. At one point, he says he's very dumb, and also that his péché, his sins, are more from a lack of imagination. And so, we should say this is in like during World War II in Spain, and I guess fascism is sort of winning, and the characters are either anarchists or just are against the system. Or not even. Juan is there for no reason. Like his brother is the leader of an anarchist thing or something.
Again, playing into the determinism, right? Like, look, we need bodies to sacrifice because we want to appear as though we're doing our job and winning. Your brother kind of has ties to this. We're going to interrogate you. Whatever you say, it doesn't matter. You're still going there. So.
Yeah, but determinism, in what sense with Pablo, though? Because at the end, it doesn't happen. What was supposed to happen.
Well,
and I see also what you're saying with the other thing, but with Pablo, but
oh, I see. Well, I guess
he doesn't die.
I think if
Spoiler.
you put into if you put into if the absurd man, right, is supposed to be Pablo, because we are kind of living the story through him. He's the narrator. Whatever is going to happen is everything that others want to happen, right? That's determinism for me. So it's never going to be what he wants. So if the policemen say he's going to die, he's going to die. If they give him an out, and even if he doesn't take it,
right,
the out is going to be taken. So that's going to become clearer when we get to the end. In any case, I mean, we can accelerate this part. Essentially, there's also this guy named Ramon Grease, and I think he's the big dog, so they want him. They want Pablo to give him up. So when the time comes, and they've all been softened up by this thought of death, they take the other two guys. But because Ramon Grease is so important, they leave Pablo in the cell. And while the others are getting executed, and he can even hear the sounds in the yard of shootings, correct?
Yeah, but they start early and they continue. I guess he doesn't know when they specifically die. But,
yeah, so the shootings start before, and then his two cellmates are taken. So the policemen hope to have softened him up to the idea that, he's going to give up Ramon Grease because now he's been dead for a day.
And he has a chance to live.
And he has a chance to change that. But the problem with that is death just took it out of him. He's indifferent. He finds everything funny. I think when the officer doesn't really have the courage to really hit him, but he kind of roughs him up in some way.
He takes his hand and stands up and I guess sort of pulls his hand and squeezes his bicep.
But not strongly enough.
Yeah.
Where he just Pablo just finds it funny at this point. It's like, really, is this what you're gonna do to a dead man? Like, I'm not afraid of these things anymore. So that's a pretty cool description. And ultimately, all they want him to do is give up Ramon Grease. And as a kind of last joke, closing act, Pablo decides to. But he knows where Ramon is, but he decides to mislead. Thank you. Okay. He decides to mislead the policeman to another spot. So he just kind of tells them a random spot. Ramon was with his cousins, but he says at his cousin's house or whatever. But he says he's at the cemetery. He's like, "Oh, this is gonna be fun, and I'm gonna make them dig too." So I think he says he's like,
yeah, and he finds it hilarious that it's him. He's been dead for a whole night. They're here taking themselves seriously where he can't take anything seriously. And I actually did find this part funny where he's just so proud of himself for doing this, and they're gonna turn over tombstones, they're gonna open doors, and they're just gonna find nothing. They're at a cemetery.
Yeah, he has the imagery of go search, go fetch. And you want to do the honors?
Yeah. And so the big officer guy comes back and says, "Okay, we're gonna put you in the yard, and you'll have a hearing this afternoon." And he's like, "Wait, I'm not getting killed now? Why?" And then the officer just shrugs and then walks off. And he's put in the yard. He sort of walks around aimlessly. This part is skipped in time, so I guess it just passes without him noticing. He says 4 people that supposedly know him, say his name, try to get his attention, but he just ignores them and walks. And then someone he knows well, I think the barber or the butcher or something, comes into the camp and tells him, "Oh, I never thought I'd see you alive. They got me this afternoon." And then he whispers they got Ramon Grease. And then he explains that Ramon, I guess, didn't trust anyone. I don't think they say explicitly, but Ramon changes his mind. He says, "I'm not going to stay at the cousins." And
no, they have a fight.
Oh, they have a fight with the cousins?
Yeah, he has a fight with the cousins, so he's I need a new spot to hide.
Yeah, and he says, if Pablo was here, I would hide at Pablo's spot, at Pablo's apartment, but he's not here, so I'm just... and he has other places to hide. He has other people he trusts. But he decides to go alone to the cemetery where Pablo said he was going to be. And he was there. He tried to fight back, and they shot him, and he's dead.
So, yeah. So, big determinism of, hey, we're asking you a question, say the truth or lie to us, or
right.
We're going to get our thing. So, it definitely, it's a good introduction to what absurdism is, right? This comedy of a life where nothing seems to matter. Your actions seem to be disconnected from the consequences. And this is an exaggeration. I'm sure no one perceives this on such a big scale in their daily life, but there are some certain intuitions where you're just like, well, why are these people doing that? This doesn't have the consequences they want. Were they just told? Is this determined? Sometimes it doesn't matter what you do. So one thing in the beginning, I don't know, this is a small thing. I don't know if you noticed this, but he says, I don't like at the beginning when they have to accept their death, he looks at
Tom,
and he's like, I don't think this guy like fully understands what's going on. But then he also says that he himself doesn't necessarily understand. And this is where,
and they both don't want to understand.
yeah, and this is where the difference between internalizing and rationally understanding comes in, where I myself have experienced this big disconnect of, look, I can rationalize that something is going to go well because my prior experience, my problem solving abilities, like I know I'm going to get out of this fine, but I still feel anxious. And you're just like, I mean, who's winning here, right? My rational mind or my subconscious? And these guys have fully understood with their rational mind what's going on, right? He gives a pretty vivid description of, yeah, we're doomed. Like they have this discussion too. But there's still a sort of denial with their unconscious before they start to experience the physiological symptoms. That's where it starts internalizing. And I think it's part of the kind of comedy and the futility of what you're doing. And I really want to explore this determinism where you can rationalize anything, but if your subconscious is stubborn that day and you haven't maybe put into place the mechanisms to actually handle it, you might feel a totally different way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't see the link with the death though. Specific that didn't make me think of the rational mind versus subconscious, because what you're saying there is that the rational mind can imagine, like Tom's rational mind can imagine himself being shot, and he, I don't know, he sort of can imagine himself being outside of his body, looking at his body down on the ground, but what he has to do, and I didn't see the link with the unconscious there, is to imagine him not experiencing anymore. He has always experienced, but he has to suddenly imagine him not having any experience because he's dead, and that's just unimaginable. And that's more just like spiritual and I don't know what is death?
This is spiritual and mental, right? So, okay, I don't think my point was pretty well articulated, but this is the funny part that I was leading towards. Is did you notice this? I think it's Tom when he's panicking. They're still in this unsettled like denial stage, and he asks, how many
people?
How many soldiers are there? He's like,
oh yeah,
how many soldiers are there going to be at the shooting? Like one, you know, and it's those futile questions that you're trying to utilize to distract your mind from something stressful that's going to happen. You know, like imagine you're about to enter a big interview, and the interview room, you're like, well, are they gonna have water there? Like, what's the temperature? Those little things that like are tangential to what's gonna happen, but you're gonna use them to distract, like as if to show others that you're still thinking about the thing, right? The water is in the interview room, or the soldiers are gonna be the one who are gonna execute them. But it's so trivial that you're still trying to take your mind off of things. Do you feel that? Like, I feel like I would do such a thing for sure.
Yeah, it felt like they're trying to sort of normalize. I mean, doing anything in that situation, I feel like is sort of trying to cope with impending death. Anything you do is just like you trying to cope with death. They're acting normal. They're like, okay, and so how is it going to happen? Okay, they're going to take us out to the courtyard. Like he's imagining going through that as if it was like what's going to be my routine tomorrow morning. They're going to press up against the wall. How many people are going to be there? Like just laying it out entirely. And then Pablo is like 5 to 8, not more than 8. Like why?
That's a really good point. You mentioned earlier, he is trying to imagine the humanly unimaginable thing of not having experience, of not having experiences.
Yeah.
And the way to do that is to simply physically describe everything that's going to happen, right?
Yeah, but not to do that, right? But the way they're trying to do that.
The way they think it might lead to that is like, okay, well, look, let me understand death. They're going to take us out at 6:25, right? Stuff like that. And it is very funny.
Yeah.
That's where the absurdism comes in. But you were going to say they were trying to normalize death. Well, you said that. He literally says it is not normal to die at some point.
Yeah,
Do
yeah.
you know? Did that stick?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
That's what I wrote.
Yeah, but
And it's funny, like he
Mhm.
just says that. How? How is it not normal to die?
Well, because it happens only once to every person. It's normal to wake up in the morning and drink your coffee and go out to work. It's not normal to die and I think by temperament, we're not people that think a lot about death and that stress about, but there are some people that,
Yeah.
that's all they think about. Well, not all they think about, but they think about it a lot and it stresses them out a lot. And I mean, partly the only reason I'm exempt from that is just because, again, my personality just isn't like that. Like, I don't think about it and it doesn't matter. And I think if I did have that inclination to think about death, I couldn't explain it rationally. And that's why so many people obsess with it. You can't explain it rationally. It's not a normal experience.
Yeah, and wouldn't you say that this is a theory I just developed? Wouldn't you say that it may be this tunnel vision on your physiological state that may bring you to that? Because ultimately, when you're saying, like, it just made sense, right? When you said it is not normal for a person to die because you can't do it every day or get used to it. But as soon as you zoom out and go from a philosophical point of view, it is extremely normal to die, right? It's part of the life cycle.
Sure, like,
And this is the thing.
Yeah.
We're privileged with not being in this neurotic, physiologically excited state of disturbance that would come associated with knowing you're going to die, right? Some people are like that, are neurotic in their daily life. And so because they're having these physiological experiences, right? Inflammation, I'm guessing that's what stress leads to, right? Headaches, what else? Like, I don't know, this stress, right? They're living in their body. They're
Okay.
living in their body. Thinking about death would only be thought of on a personal level, right? If you think about those people who are worried about death, they're probably stressed people who have a lot of sensations and physiological signs of their anxiety,
okay.
right? That feels plausible. We don't, and we can zoom out and see death as normal, because I think it's as true to say that death is normal as to say it is not normal. On a humanity level, it's normal. On a human level, it's abnormal because it's the end of all experience. It happens once in your life. So you contrast those people, you contrast with us, and then you contrast it with Paulo Coelho.
Pablo.
So
Quaalude.
So, and now he shifts from a normal state where he's just a normal guy to this physiologically excited state, constantly sweating. This is one of the things I didn't mention. The guy just like sweats up a river. And now he's like enclosed in his own experience and he's like, death is not normal. When I read death is not normal, I genuinely wanted you like to ask you, I don't understand what that means. Death is not normal.
Yeah, but okay. Yeah, before he is like you and I, he says, I've never thought about death because I didn't have an opportunity to think about death.
Yeah.
But I don't see what you're saying. I mean, it's a hypothesis, I guess, that people that think about death and are stressed about death,
Think about their body, like live in their body.
I don't know, live in their bodies and have a lot of physiological stress responses because they're stressed in general. Maybe, but also maybe not. I don't see why that's necessary. And you're talking as if the sweating came before the obsession with death. But that's not necessarily true. You know, that he gets condemned to die and then he tries to deny it, and then I don't know, the indifference of life, him dying, like he dies and then he starts sweating. It all happens sort of at the same time, and I can't say that one happens before the other.
Okay, but also just to supplement my hypothesis, you're probably right, but just to supplement my hypothesis as a final thought, let me see if this is like an intuition you share with me. If I were to ask you what is death, you would probably answer on a more spiritual level, right? For example, I would answer nothingness, end of thought, or something like that. Even that's maybe a little bit physical, but my mind would be concentrated there. To people who are stressed about death, I feel like it would be about the pain, right? About the physical sensation of, well, sure, maybe something will stop afterwards, but I'm gonna feel something before that, and that's what I'm afraid of.
Nah. I still feel like it's exactly that nothingness that they're stressed about. So maybe they have like the exact same thoughts as you, but that for some reason obsesses them.
I feel I disagree. Like if I were to imagine that modeled person, I
but
think
that's
the pain part is what they're stressed about. The nothingness and the unknown. I mean, usually they can just take the spiritual side and say, well, I'm gonna end up in heaven, but the pain that's gonna come before that maybe.
I don't think that if you tell a person that's afraid of dying, oh, you're just gonna walk into a room, breathe in a colorless, odorless gas and die, they're gonna be like, oh, okay, that's fine then. I'm not gonna feel pain. That's not the point. The point is the absence of experience. We're not those people. We're not that guy, pal.
Maybe we should do a case study. So here's the next thing that is very interesting. You mentioned him looking at the sky and being like, well, if I only knew that this is what death was, or if I died like this, it wouldn't have made sense to do all this. So there's a quote here.
I didn't say that. You should say it.
Yeah, well, I'm going to say the exact quote, right? It kind of made me think of this.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have lifted my little finger if I knew that I would have died like this. If I knew that I'd die like this.
Yeah, and chasing women and doing things.
Yeah, all these pleasures of life. He's like, well, look, if I knew this was going to be my end, I wouldn't have even bothered. And that's very interesting that he has that thought.
But also, like, probably right after, he says, I wish it was a life, or maybe not I wish, but it wasn't even a life he could be proud of, right? Because he accomplished nothing in his life. He didn't bring anything to its end.
Well, that seems to mean the opposite thing.
The opposite, right?
Exactly. And this
that
is
it
exactly...
could have meant something, but he's rationalizing it in this way because it didn't mean nothing in the end.
Okay. So, see, that's the thing. The intuition I would have had if I was in his shoes is, I wish I had done double what I did, right? A little bit to quote Eminem, if I could go back now,
I wouldn't.
I would have did more something they said that I shouldn't.
To quote Tupac, I'm gonna double it and keep doubling it until they kill me.
Right. And so we're pretty hip. So
hop.
Again, that's a very interesting point, that this part that I noted down that clashed with my intuition may be a denial thing, where he's just like, it's so bleak now, and all these things that I could have done are so, grayscale, that I don't even wish I would have done them. I wish I just like did nothing and then died. But ultimately what he's trying to do is kind of deny the fact that all of those things were beautiful, and in fact are made even more desirable by the fact that his life was limited. And this is what he says, actually. He says, at some point, I don't know the context, but he says, when you have lost the impression of the eternal, of being eternal.
Yeah.
This is what he qualifies his life as. And yeah, I guess, that's
what we are.
Is. That's what youth is, right?
Yeah, but that's what we are in the sense that we don't think about death either, right?
Yeah.
I would agree. I have the impression of being immortal.
Yeah, fair enough.
We act as if we're immortal.
Yeah, just because 100 years is in 4 more lifetimes than what I have known now.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's I feel like that's against intuition or normal talk about death. Because normally when you talk about death, the way I visualize it is like, it gives you a deadline. It gives you a reason to do stuff now. And I sort of moved on from that. But before, I thought, like, if I was immortal, I mean, I wouldn't want to do anything because you don't have an end line. You don't have like a deadline. You're not motivated to do stuff before you die. But he says the complete opposite. He used to have values and things he cared about because he had the impression of being immortal. Now that he was dead, and that's what he is in the cell, nothing matters.
Yeah, that's. I mean, it's funny that we're talking about Sartre's kind of paradoxical description of the impending death, and that on a literary level, and the vivid descriptions, seems more valuable than the whole plot twist, doesn't it? Like,
yeah. But I think that's the point too. Yeah.
Well, it might be the point, but the absurdism, really, right? The main
comes
point
from the plot.
Comes from the plot point. And I think the reason it's so uninteresting to us, well, not uninteresting, it's a funny, like it's a thing that you want to happen once in your life in your reading experience, that such a thing is explored. But if you translate it to real life, that part is much more unlikely. The consequences of it are kind of fine. I guess what would be even more interesting is the psychological level. At a psychological level, the reaction Pablo would have afterwards. So the whole like, well, now I got to live. What the heck am I going to do?
Yeah.
Right?
And I was also going to ask about his reaction when Ramon dies. What's his laugh exactly? Because he falls down laughing and
I mean, it's a laugh of desperation of like, well, I'm dead, now I gotta live, and in living I have to face the fact that I didn't want to be a traitor, but I was, and like, am I to be blamed for this? Like, this is another thing, like, I talk about a lot. It's, in this case, Pablo is certainly going to absorb some of the blame for the death of Ramon. But on a large scale, it's not even imaginable where that would come in. Like
the blame?
Yeah, the blame, right? He said some words that he genuinely had absolutely no reason to believe would hurt Ramon. And
this is like a strong case for Kantianism.
Yeah, well... Oh, I see. Yeah, for sure.
The intuition is,
sure.
He's not supposed to be blamed. Like
it is a 40-page thought experiment for Kantianism.
For Kantianism. Yeah. I should quote that in my essay and just make it 40 pages.
I mean, it's literally the friend in your backyard with a killer at your front door kind of thing. Should you lie?
Well, not literally, but
sorry.
Like the
Kant would say you
something?
shouldn't lie, but he did.
Oh.
It's a reverse Kantianism.
Yeah, but in terms of blame...
Actually, it's more interesting than that. It's anti-Kantian and it's anti-consequentialist. Because consequentially, Ramon dies. And Kantianismally, he lies.
Yeah, but those are two separate events. Kant would say you don't lie, but then also Kant would say you're not blameworthy for the death of Ramon.
Oh, okay. Well, if you consider both together, it's a very good counterexample to both, wouldn't it be? Like philosophically.
Like, yeah, you should lie here. You should lie.
Well,
that's the intuition we have.
Intuitions. Yeah.
Our intuition says we should lie, but Kantianism says you shouldn't, and consequentialism says
you should.
Consequentialism doesn't care because it's either you die or Ramon dies.
Oh, right. That's fair. That's a pretty fair thing to say.
Yeah, but it's a good point. And then at that point, consequentialism wouldn't care, I guess. And then Kant would say, you're not blameworthy.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Were you done with your points?
I'm kind of done, yeah.
I just wanted to ask what you thought about the Juan's bite.
Oh, the doctor?
Because my intuition was that was the only kind act the doctor did do. Like, Pablo sort of asks in the story. Because, yeah, the doctor is sort of there. I feel like he's become numb to like suffering from this fascist system, and he is there scientifically, just, he records the pulse, but he also turns away from Pablo, and Pablo has to lean back to see him record the pulse. So he's sort of ashamed, but also he does it anyway.
Is it like a zoo of like extinct animals kind of?
That's crazy.
Like, yeah. Like you'd be watching through the bars of the cage. You'd kind of be ashamed because like it's a spectacle, but they're also endangered animal. I feel like that's what the metaphor is kind of saying.
Yeah, but then he stands up and sort of, Juan panics all the way through, which is why the Tom and Pablo feel he's more alive, right? He says, it's like when you have a fever, right? Your body is responding to the cold. If you don't have a fever and you have a cold, then that's a problem. That's even worse. You're dead. It's over. The doctor stands up, sort of like puts his hand on his head or something, and then Juan takes his hand, and Pablo and Tom knew what was going to happen, but the doctor sort of smiles and like, oh, look, I'm comforting this guy. And then Juan chomps his hand, tries to chomp his hand, and then the doctor removes it.
Yeah, I would see it as two things. The first is probably less likely, but it's the first thought I had, so I'll just say it. It's like the last cry of a dying beast? Like, when a dying animal is letting out his last cry, and like...
A lot of animal metaphors now.
Yeah, and nothing seems to matter in that cry where... Yeah, okay, well, actually, it's so bad, I'm not going to continue on that. The other thing I thought is, he just wants to remain an actor in the world, And the world of the dead is kind of the cage, and what's outside, and of course, again, it's verbatim referred to as the living, right? The doctor is the living. So I think if he enacts an action on the living, he feels like he's still consequential in the world and therefore not dead. Maybe that's my best theory.
Yeah. And maybe within that, there's also mixed in a knowledge that, because the doctor took his pulse earlier, and like what a selfish, inhuman thing to do. They're here about to die, Juan especially, for no reason. There's a lot of reason to be angry with the doctor. The only reason Pablo doesn't hit him is that when he stands up, he remembers, but he's like, oh, okay, I'm too indifferent for this. I'm just gonna sit down and not do nothing, not do anything. Ooh.
Yeah.
But like there's reason to be angry, and so Juan maybe was angry at the doctor and.
But again, there's always this shame and like reluctancy to like admit what he's doing, and it's not malicious. I think the doctor is kind of just being like, look, well, observing dead people while alive is such an interesting phenomenon that somebody's got to do it. I'm sorry that it's got to be me. I'm sorry that the dead people have to be you, but we're going to do this, right? I think that's kind of the context. So there's no hate for the doctor on my side.
You don't hate the doctor?
I don't hate the doctor. Like,
I hate the doctor. You're an individual actor with free will, and you chose to do that.
Well, it's kind of the like Stanford experiment perspective for me. It's, well, somebody had to do this because if we don't record what a dead person
what
acts
did the
like,
Stanford experiment?
Well, you have to do
out?
unethical things to discover amazing things about human nature, I think.
Okay.
So, yeah, really, if you're listening, doctor, no hate. We're good. We're cool. With Alex, it's gonna be less cool, but whatever. So at the beginning, I genuinely, after I read the story, I was like, is this worthy of Jean-Paul Sartre? Like, did I get the bang for my buck for 40 pages of a short story about, like, from Jean-Paul Sartre? Like, I didn't have the wow factor that I thought would come with reading such a classic, right?
Such a classic author?
Yeah, classic author, and that's not one of his biggest works. And because I was so concentrated, I was so tunnel visioned on the plot twist at the end. But I think this conversation made it come out that that's not the main point of interest. It never was.
Oh, I mean, at least for us. But I think it's not like the plot twist and the absurdism of his death and the story, as you say, is the point of the absurd, is like 80% of the story, overwhelmingly, right? Like the middle 10 pages are a description of the psychological progression towards death. And that's really interesting too. Yeah.
Certainly. Okay. Good stuff. I mean, practical.
I'm not sure.
Don't stop thinking about death. It's fine. It'll come when it'll come. Just live, kind of.
Yeah, just I guess, I mean, I think pain is just always a valid fear. So just hope you die quickly, and
the only way to do that. Okay, well,
is to listen to Thinking Bros at Thinking Bros.
No, yeah, of course, and read my blog. So, no, but realistically, if you do read the story and hear the vivid description, you don't want to end up like Pablo in the sense where you're saying, again, this wasn't one of his main points, but you don't want to be saying, I could have done more. That's the only thing. Just live, like truly live. Live, laugh, love. So, as we always say,
we live,
here
we laugh,
at
we die.
thinkingbros.com, or contact us at thinkingbros@gmail.com, and the Thinking Bros rating, rated R, no, copyrighted Thinking Bros rating of Figured It Out is
after 3. 1, 2, 3, 9. Yes.
We agree so much more when I don't design the theories. You know what I'm saying? So, but yeah, thank you for listening this week. Tune in next week for something new. And I think we're going to talk about William James.
Yeah.
So it will be my birthday again. Twice a year, right? And 3 times a year on my birthday. See you next week. I was Chris.
Alex.